Hello, Replit community, and welcome to No Assembly Required, our monthly workshop where we discuss pedagogy and all things teaching. This week, this month even, we're joined by Jenna deBoisblanc. Hi, Jenna.
That was a beautiful pronunciation. You nailed it.
Was it good? Because I was worried I was going to go too French. That's the problem with being British.
As a non-French speaker, I think you did great.
I think all our French audience will be embarrassed for me, but I understand. Don't
For
worry.
both of us, I think.
Jenna is here to talk to us today about creative coding and coming at programming from a slightly different angle. Let's just kick off, Jenna. I'll pop you up on your own and you can tell us a little bit about yourself and what your background is.
Yeah, for sure. So my background is a little bit of computer science. Actually, I majored in physics. And then I think probably right after college, I discovered processing, the visual programming language that's designed for artists. And I fell completely in love. And so I pursued an MFA in digital arts. So that's kind of my education background. I was hired to teach computer science at a school in California. And I just feel really passionately about being involved in the intersection of the arts and computer science, that it's such a fun and engaging way to introduce a challenging subject. So in all of my classes, I really try to rope in creative expression. And I'm also an artist in my limited free time. So I make art with code. So I'm stoked to be here.
It's fantastic. And I think one of the most exciting things about the way Jenna pitches her curriculum is it's from an arts point of view. So, it's unusual in that way, but we'll talk a bit more about that in a minute. Let's get the agenda up, is it? And let's start business like we mean to run it. So this is the order in which we'll run things in. Jen, I hope that was your website that I found when I was checking on that. I presume it is, because it looked like yours. But we're going to start today with why go creative. We're going to talk a little bit about why this might be for you, or why this might be the direction you want to going. And of course, this covers everything, not just teachers in a classroom, but also people building tutorials and curriculum content online. There's a million different Hello World type tutorials. So coming at it from a different angle gives you a bit more of an interesting way to give content to people. Then we'll have a look at an overview of the sort of projects that Jenna runs, a few demos. We'll see if I can be artsy by doing a live code along. We'll see. I will spoilers. I do have an A level in art, but that was 20 years ago. So we'll see how I get on. And then a Q&A at the end. So let's get started with the big question, Jenna, which is my next beautiful slide. Animation's a bit slow. Why? Why do we go creative? What difference does it make?
Well, and I think this is on the next slide, but I think my 2 cents is I think we would probably all agree that computer science or computational thinking is a critical 21st century skill. And so if we're trying to think about how we cast a broad net and get as many different students with different interests involved as possible, I think that creating space for creative expression is, in my mind, a way to introduce computer science that possibly has something for everyone. If you're interested in solving a tough geometry problem, I just had a kid today, we're working through, it's in digital arts, a project that's using sine and cosine to create some beautiful sine wave visualizations. If you want to create something inspired by an artist, I think if you want to create a video game, the world is sort of your oyster when you use a programming language that's designed to be visual. I just think it creates so many different flavors that attract a lot of different students. I also think when you can draw things to the screen, you sort of have this instantaneous feedback of, I wrote a line of code and it created an ellipse on the screen. In 5 lines of code, I have programmed a rainbow. And there's just, I think that like immediate feedback is a really good hook when you're trying to convince students of the power and the excitement and the creative possibility of computer science. So those are me just rattling off a few reasons. I just think it's fun. Is
That's number
fundamentally.
one, isn't it? It's always one
Yeah.
of those things, isn't it? The way I taught computer science in high schools for 20 years, and I never took it from this direction. We did some artsy stuff low when they were younger because it was a bit of fun to do. But the moment they got onto
Hmm.
stuff that we had to assess them on, like
Right.
in the UK system, my hands were tied. Really, I had to teach it in a very certain way. But the way
Mm-hmm.
you introduce them to it means that you even get really interesting gender balances. Do you want to talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And I think, you know, my first job basically out of college was working for a software company. And I think I was one of 20, like there, I mean, the gender ratio was terrible, as you might imagine. And I think that in a lot of ways that was sort of my interest in teaching, was to try to think about ways to creatively engage more women, more people of color, in the classroom. And not to say that, like, because you're a girl, suddenly you like the arts, or because you're a boy, you like engineering. And like, I don't believe, I believe if that exists, it's because of socialization. But I do think that the more, I don't know, the more ways that you sort of allow students to plug their own vision into what they're creating, as opposed to writing a prescriptive, like, what's something I did in college? A tic-tac-toe board. Like, and as opposed to mandating this is a problem that you're going to solve, like, how about an open-ended design prompt that says you have to use a for loop to create something visual? And then it's like you're still hitting the same technical competencies, but you're kind of creating room for students to bring what they're passionate about to the canvas or to the program. So I do think thinking I do I do think that a creative approach, in my perspective, encourages more of a gender balance, and in general just encourages students of all backgrounds to find something that they love about coding. So um, that's definitely been a driving factor in my own curriculum for sure.
I think this is really important, isn't it? My gender balances in my classes were never great, as much as we tried. But
Mhm.
I'm a man teaching the subject, so um,
Yeah.
it's difficult, isn't it? Because I would have loved to have had 50-50 gender breakdowns in my classroom, but
Mhm.
the way the way we teach it as an exam subject in the UK, you don't get into that creativity again, unfortunately,
Mhm.
until
Well,
they're right at the
yeah.
end of the course. And it's more
And
like
I
go on.
well, I was just going to say I took one computer science class in college and I decided it wasn't for me. Like, I thought it was utterly boring. And it's just so inconceivable to me that I would have had that experience and then fallen head over heels in love with programming. And that's, I think, the kernel for me. That's like the disconnect of like it. And not to say that like, I'm sure there are plenty of people in my college class that took it and were like, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. Like, I think there is room for everything. And even within my own curriculum, like when I teach the advanced computer science class, it looks a little bit more like a traditional college level computer science class, but I also throw in some creative projects and mix it up. Um, but I think the more, yeah, I think the more ways that we can find those different flavors, and I think the creative element makes that possible, is really what I feel.
Now, one of the things we also talked about was lowering like the barrier to entry. Why do you think that if you go from a creative point of view and you let them experiment a bit more, it lowers that barrier? Why is that easier for people to get into, do you think?
I mean, I guess what I think is it's kind of like starting with scratch as opposed to just like jumping in with C++. plus plus. Like, I think you have to be able to see two things. I think you have to have confidence that, like, oh, these are problems I can solve. I think you have to be able to see like the end goal of like what this can do. And I think when you start at a level that isn't scary, where it's like and the cool thing is like I'm teaching ninth graders right now in the foundation arts. So I see every single ninth grader. So a, it's not like there isn't a gender divide in my class because I literally see every student. And when you're sitting next to other students and you're having a kind of fun, like low barrier, like relatively straightforward, cool, and making ellipses and rainbows. And then you get the hook and you're like, oh, this isn't actually as scary as I thought it was. Oh, I can see the cool things you can build with code. Then I think it gives you more of that grit and resilience to continue pursuing when it is a challenging subject that can get very mathy and very complex. And I think, so maybe it fundamentally comes down to like, how do you make people safe and feel confident in the beginning so that they want to continue pursuing and push their boundaries is maybe what I would say to that question.
That's fascinating. Like safe is a word I don't think about very much in the computer science classroom, but you're absolutely right. Yeah, yeah.
And I think that's why like majoring in physics or going and working at a software company where you don't see yourself represented when you're like a Black woman in like, it's like like, why would I feel safe in an environment where I don't see myself represented? So I think that's critical to, yeah, sorry, I interrupted you.
No, you're right. Like representation is really, really important. And, luckily for me, white bald men seem to be a large percentage of the industries that I went into.
Yeah.
But I can't imagine. I can't imagine how difficult it must be to go into like to try to go into a workplace where it's 80% white bald men, and you're not one of them. It must be quite intimidating to be. I'm saying bald. I just mean. Yeah, okay, I'll stop saying that. It's missing the point a little bit, isn't it? But yeah, it must be really difficult. You must have to, like you said, grit as well, didn't you? Like it's safety and grit, and I think one of the things I really enjoyed about looking at your curriculums that you've been showing me earlier on today was just how exciting and interesting it is, and how it's just like there's something for everyone. And I think that might be a good opportunity for us to jump in and have a look. Do you want to talk us through how your projects work?
Totally. So the general idea, this is designed to be it's quick. It's a 3-week rotation that I have it's in our arts department. Mm-hmm. So each one of these little modules on the screen sort of represents a class period. And we spend basically the first 2 weeks just through these stepwise scaffolded projects. And each one is designed to have sort of, generally speaking, a artistic inspiration. So for example, the variables project, we look at Piet Mondrian as our artistic inspiration, but there's also sort of like a technical or a conceptual nugget as well. So yeah, for example, like when we look at for loops, we start by looking at some of the wall drawings of Sol LeWitt, which actually translates really nicely into code. For nested loops, we look at the artist Vera Molnar, who's one of the first women and first computer scientists to use code to create art. So there's always sort of like pairing art inspiration with a coding concept. And then by the time we get to the final 2 or 3 class periods, at that point, basically I tell students, the world is your oyster. You can take code from the previous examples. You can start from scratch. Sometimes I will let students go to openprocessing.org and use and iterate on other people's code. But I've sort of steered away from that because I think they'll take code that they don't understand and then it gets messy. So, but the results have been really great. And it's just a couple of days of in-class work of students letting their creative expression run wild. And I think that's what I'm most excited about, is when you have tools at your disposal, but then you also get to sort of create your own vision. And so happy to show some of those final results as examples as well.
Should we jump over to your computers? You can show that. Is that okay?
Yeah, you want to start there?
Yeah, go on.
With the
it's always good to get an idea about the sort of things we'll see at the end.
Yeah, so I'm just going to scroll through a few of them. And a lot of them are interactive.
Oh wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, and And
So
and
that's
some of
something
them
that
are
I forget about, isn't it? Is that this is interactive art. It's not just putting some pretty colors or some patterns on a page. It's interaction with it as well, which changes the way it presents, which
totally,
is another level.
totally. Of course, my page just froze. Boop, boop. Some of them are interactive, some of them aren't. This one I really like.
Oh,
Woo.
that's pretty cool.
Marco's. This one might have pulled from another example. I can't remember. Yeah. Yeah, and they're all, and you'll start to see when we look at some of the example projects.
You still there, Jenna? I think Jenna's disappeared for a second there. Assuming it's Jenna and not me. I'll just double check that by looking at my stream to see what's going on there. No, it is Jenna. Seems to have frozen for a minute. Oh, you back, Jenna? No. Well, while we wait for Jenna to rejoin us, let's take a quick look at some of the pieces of work that she's shown to me. So I'm going to switch back over to mine and we'll have a quick look. These are the sorts of things that Jenna's been building as part of her curriculum. So I think that wasn't the first one. The random brush, I think, was the first one. Now, this is really nice. This is a nice thing that you could present to your students. And I like the idea of doing this with mine. I think this would be a lovely starter, lovely activity to do, because as you click, you get random brush sizes and effects, and you can press delete to erase. So you get a bit of a random drawing program. And that's, I think that's fantastic. I really love that. And you can see how just visually these things are grabbing you. Now, to me, that is much more fun than just Hello World or the equivalent. And you know, we've spent time at Replit building out 100 days of code, and in a probably a more traditional sort of skill build. Oh, she's back. Hi, Jenna.
I'm back.
I thought it was my computer that had gone then for a second.
No, it's like I've been needing to take my computer to the IT people for like months. It randomly crashes all the time. Hopefully, it doesn't happen again. Sorry.
I was just taking the opportunity to show some of the examples that were linked out from the document you sent me earlier. I was talking about this random brush, and I was saying that one of the things I like about these things is that this is, I suppose, in code complexity terms, this is quite simple, but the results are really, really interesting. And in terms of that, we've done 100 days of code recently, and we've built that out in a more traditional way, sort of the projects that and the level of creativity we're putting in there. But this captures a different kind of learner, doesn't it? This gets somebody that's like, oh, wow, I'm really into doing that.
Yeah, isn't this one? I think there's an example just like this that's like the default when you open up a P5 JS.
Yeah, it is. It's a flashing ball, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, which I think is, yeah, like immediately it's like 4 lines of code, and it's like, cool. I just did something that feels interactive, and it's colorful, and it's and there's some fun. The way that I structure my classes in our school is really puts a lot of emphasis on inquiry. So I try to do very little, like maximum 5 minutes of lecture, and it's all, I'll throw in some questions or some links to reference pages, but I think there's some really fun ways to scaffold these exercises that really creates fun little problems that you have to solve in the process, which I think is great.
There's some great stuff here. I like this. This is the faster you move your mouse, the bigger the emoji come in, and that's just like there's a lot of, well, even physics involved in that, isn't it? There's massive cross curricular in terms of what's happening with that.
That's what I get most excited about too. Yeah.
I just think that's a really nice way to get people excited, and I just think back to all the times that I tried to introduce programming to my younger classes with the gender balance was a 50-50 mix. And the amount of times that we do something really creative and then I'd go, okay, now we're going to look at loops or something. And I never had a creative way of doing that, but I see that some of yours are based on loops, aren't they? Which one is it? Is it the Mondrian one? The Mondrian, I love this, by the way.
Oh,
I've
this
spent
when we
hours
talk
today
about variables.
just moving my mouse. So how is this? How do you sort of cover variables in this? Then what are we talking
Well,
about?
this
Sizes
one's
or ratios?
well, there's like 4 predefined variables in P5JS, like mouse X, mouse Y, width, and height. And we use that to sort of talk about like, why would you use a variable? What does a variable mean? It's honestly a little bit more of a geometry exercise of like, and I tell them like these same mathematical relationships have to be preserved no matter what size your canvas is. So there's a lot of going to the board and working in pairs. That's another thing that I think is what I love about, and I don't know if it's the creative, I guess this applies to any kind of computer science class, but I love the collaboration that takes place when we're solving these kinds of problems. And you'll have groups of students that are up at the board that are just drawing rectangles to figure out like mathematical relationships between variables. Yeah. And especially, and I don't know if this is totally true, but somebody told me that another way to encourage more women to pursue computer science is to really emphasize that collaborative nature, I think to just build more support systems and networks of like of other people in your class that are, I don't know, that you see this, so you see yourself reflected and you feel supported in your learning environment. So all of these projects that we do, I let students work in pairs or groups of 3.
One of the things that I like, obviously, the thing that I found really useful with Replit when doing that was just the multiplayer feature, because the way I used to run peer programming sessions before then, pretty much one person did the work and the other people just
right.
But as soon as you've got multiplayer and you can see where people are typing and who's contributing what, there's a certain amount of action going on here. So this is the random colored rectangles one. Is this the one that uses the loops?
Yeah. This one, yeah, uses, so we talk about nested for loops and why you would need to create something that's 2D instead of just a 1D loop. And we talk about Vera Molnar. This work was like kind of inspired by some of her work. And then, yeah, students recreate this example. So yeah, so much of like what we've looked at so far is I have students replicating exactly the example, just as a means of like ensuring you understand this concept. But it does take a step away from sort of allowing students to insert their own creativity, but that kind of comes at the end.
What I like about this though is that, what I like about this is it sort of replicates 2 things that I've got experience with. One is sort of teaching a skill where you get them to copy what you've done and then extend it a little bit and then give them the freedom to do something themselves. But also from the time that I spent studying art way back when, it was always about, here's a technique, let's learn the technique and then let's apply it to your own journey, your own creativity, your own ideas. And so this feels to me more like an artistic approach to learning the skill, which I think is brilliant that you've managed to capture that feel in these sort of tutorials.
You know what else I love that I think has come from my background in the arts, and I do this even in my advanced computer science class, is when we run critiques of our final projects that feel like art critiques. And so it's, as opposed to, well, and I don't know, I guess this already kind of happens in a traditional computer science class, but we spend a lot of time both analyzing the visual, but also like, let's critique your use of functions. Let's critique your use of variable names. Like there's the language that we use and the way that we like evaluate peer work feels more akin to the ways that I've come at it from an arts perspective, as opposed to like, I don't know, something that feels a little bit more traditional. And I think that has really felt like it works well when we're trying to arrive at and discuss our work.
That word in itself sounds a better use of the sort of things you want. Like I would put students together and I'd say, evaluate their code or do a code review on this person's code. And it was never very effective at getting like a qualitative improvement. It was good at getting like, oh, you haven't done X, Y, and Z, and actually this is missing. But what I was always looking for was a way to do, your loop here could be better in this regard. It was those sort of things. And I think that word critique just on its own seems perfect.
Yeah.
I've got a question in the chat, Jenna. Can we have a link to the examples, please? Okay, it's from your website, isn't it? So this is okay to send a link.
It is. Yeah,
Yes.
you could send out all of these links for sure. I probably should make a way to make them easily accessible, which I will do.
Is it just on P5JS exercises, or are they all? Yeah, go on. I'll pop this link in there.
It is, except I will update this page. It's not currently. It doesn't include all of the examples, but I will update it.
I'll put the link in the chat for anybody that is interested. Yeah, this is. I pulled this one up accidentally, but this one has been. There's something about this. I said this earlier on. This has just been up on my screen all day. This is very, very nice. There's something very pleasing to me about the progression of the colors in this. So what does this one sort of encapsulate? What's this sort of project about, and what skills are being taught here?
Yeah, this one is more loops, and then we start talking about we've already used color before in all of the examples, but we talk about different color spaces. So this uses a hue saturation color mode as opposed to red, green, blue. So we talk a little bit about how color works, and especially within digital environments. And then it also uses the modulo operator. So we spend a little time talking about the modulo operator to get the colors to sort of continuously cycle.
That's such a nice, that's such a better use of the modulo operator than like my go-to is always, is it even or not? And printing out like rows in a table or something. This is such a nicer use of that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like I want to rip apart all my old curriculum and just revamp it with art in the title instead. This is great. Shall we go and see if we can see how well I can do at one of your exercises? Should we give that a go so we can show people how these actually work live? What do you suggest I start with project?
You want to do multiples? Let's do I don't think we should do Mondrian. Why don't we do, I would either pick 2.2. I would either do the random brush, maybe as a start, because that one's pretty straightforward. We could do that probably pretty quick.
Should we start with that one? We'll see how we go.
Yeah, let's do it.
I'll zoom in a little bit more. So this is this is P5JS, isn't it?
This is P5JS. Yep.
So you can see that, like, it does start with that basic code, and there's not a lot to that code, is there? Let's have a look. This is what we're making, and this is how random works. So they've got a link to the random brush.
Let's see if I can like not say anything, and you. How good are my instructions?
Well, I do feel a bit bad because I have written a tutorial section on P5JS.
Well, that's great.
In our first iteration of like 100 days before we started that, we were looking at learning content, and that's what I did for that. But it was the second most popular tutorial out of the two we had available at the time, which is a bit embarrassing, really, isn't it?
Are you starting to compete with? Are you telling Daniel Schiffman to look out?
No,
here comes David Morgan.
No. I don't have this. I don't have the set budget to even come remotely close to Daniel Schiffman stuff.
Oh no,
his is
Daniel
great though.
Schiffman is a god. Yeah.
So let's say try randomizing the RGB value. Okay, so I'll need to do a random number in here. So it's in 255, which is that's the hue, isn't it?
Well, so if you had done the previous exercises, what I'll tell you is you're currently in RGB mode. So if you only give Phil one number, it's going to be grayscale from 0 to 255. If you give Phil three numbers. Booyah.
Oh yeah, there we go.
Yeah, getting rainbow.
I'm quite excited by this. Look at this. It's a good selection of colors, actually. The problem with the randomization a lot of the time is because random is, well, it's close to truly random, isn't it? You can get horrible
Mhm.
colors
I
coming out
know. I was
sometimes.
actually surprised. I thought they were gonna be, like, more dull, less I thought the average color was kinda boring, but
The next one is randomizing the size. So that's the size, isn't it? There.
yep, which you would
So let's
yep,
do random between 5 and 40. Does
yep.
random work like that? Can I give it two
It
arguments?
sure does.
Yep, there we go. We'll go to the web view and refresh. What I do like about P5JS is you don't need to keep rerunning the REPL. You can just refresh the web view, which is quite nice. It's like prototyping is very, very fast as well. That's really nice.
Oh, I'm gonna hop into your project while you're doing this.
Oh, yes, please. Right. What would we add? Random splatter on the bush, a random number of mouse coordinates. Okay. So,
Oh, the
doing this,
splatter, right.
put 50 pixels either side.
Maybe while I have a replica, you could totally skirt this question. Why sometimes do my images not load, fail to load assets? But I don't that happens frequently and I don't know why.
Is it on the in the web view?
It's uh is it in my view? No, it's in my instructors like instructions assets folder.
Oh yeah, it's not loading there, is it? Let's have a look, see if we can see it. Oh,
Ooh,
I'm a student. I can't see your assets, unfortunately.
oh, right, right,
Uh,
right. Oh well.
well, they were
That's
there a
a
minute ago as well, so something's gone weird there. But well, there we go. It's probably me fussing around with something. But sometimes if you do get
yay.
image with any issues with images loading, it's all our
Mhm,
images come from repl.co domains. So
mhm,
normally in a school, that tends to be something along the chain of proxy to filter to the computer that
mm,
gets a bit confused sometimes. Usually a refresh sorts it out if that's the case.
okay.
But right, let me have a look on the web view there and refresh there. So, oh, I haven't even got I think I've got a bit too much going on there with my splatter, but there we go. I do have a bit of random splatter going on. I'm gonna refresh
Nice.
now, see if I can get those instructions back up to see what's going on.
Mhm, mhm. Oh, no.
I've got far too much of that random splatter going on, haven't I? All right, there we
I'm
go.
gonna help you out.
Oh yes, please. Ah, so
I'm just gonna do
using a
well,
list.
I just have one the way I usually tell kids to solve this is 1 for the brush and then
Ah, that
partner.
makes a lot of sense. And then significantly smaller for the splatter, presumably.
Yeah, I don't know what's gonna happen. I don't remember what the boop,
I feel
boop.
like we're giving a
Maybe
good
make this
sell for
guy like
multiplayer mode here, Jenna. This is exactly why I loved using Teams for EDU, because it's just so nice to be able to go, I'll just help you out and type over the
this is
code.
not what I would do in class exactly. I might ask you some leading questions to get you there. But for the purposes of a demo, maybe that should be like 30. I
All
think you
right,
did
it's
great,
coming
David.
together. Well, thank you. I do appreciate that. I have got like much more experience with programming language than some of the learners, though, and I'm sure they can do a much better job than me at being creative. But that's really nice. Like you can see how that builds, can't you? You can see how what sort of things do, because I presume you run a lesson like this and then you get some students doing some crazy stuff with it. What sort of
Oh,
things do you get that you sort of went, oh, I never thought I'd see that from this lesson?
oh, totally. Well, so usually I don't frequently assign homework, but for this particular class period, I'll assign homework and it's like make your own brush. I don't have them necessarily totally pulled up and ready to go, but there's a dozen examples of DIY brushes that I'm just like,
Mhm.
"Oh, what a cool idea." And it's usually students experimenting with different shapes, lines and triangles and rectangles, different opacities. If I can find one, I'll pull it up, but totally. And I think in an ideal world, and I haven't really in the arts assigning homework has been a little bit of a thing, but I think in an ideal world, the homework assignment that I would assign is take what we did in class and now just apply your own spin on it. And I think the brush is an easy place to start for sure with that.
I could see
DIY brush.
as a teenager, I would have got so into that homework. I would have spent hours on that. I probably wouldn't have put quite as much effort into my other homework that night, but that's the sort of thing that would get me excited and interested. We all know how it works in schools, and if you give the most exciting homework, you get the best results back, don't you?
Oh, totally.
It's really interesting, actually. I did, like, years ago when I was an assistant principal, we did some work on like looking at all the research for homework and whether it was worthwhile. And although we came to the conclusion from the research we looked at that it probably wasn't worthwhile, we still did it because it was like an expectation, really. If you don't give homework, people start to worry about like your academic prowess as an institution. So there was no getting away from it, unfortunately. Well, cool, that's nice. Well, I'll use this opportunity to show that we've got a back button back to the team now, which is
I'm so glad about that.
For a while. Yeah, we removed it, actually, interestingly, because people were clicking their name accidentally and getting sent back to their MyRepls page when they're in the middle of coding. So we took the link off that, but then of course there was no link to
everybody was like, where'd it go?
Yeah, so suddenly we had a lot of emails from teachers go, where's it gone? But no, it's back now. It's in a slightly different place, but it is reasonably easy to get to. So you can see the progression of these actually just from what you've got here, because after you've got random, you've got controlling whether the mouse is pressed or not and presumably changing what's happening there. You've got your emoji brush, which we've looked at before. And there's loads of good stuff there. And I really like the idea of studying an artist, and like the Mondrian one like springs to mind as an obvious one because I know Mondrian, but like you know, studying, because that is an artsy thing as well. We don't do a lot in computer science of like, well, I don't think it exists. Let's study the code of insert famous person here, and then we'll, you know, that doesn't exist, does it? But in the art world, you've got let's look at the works of this person and let's try and recreate them and let's try and be inspired by them. But the fact that you can bring that into code is just fantastic. I'm not going to do this one, but we'll have a quick look at the Mondrian one if you don't mind, just to have a look at sort of what's going on there. So we start off with this, which is just it filling in a single red square or a single red rectangle. And then we've got some different levels as well. That's nice.
Oh, that was another thing that I want to plug is that's my way to try to differentiate. Like I have students that come in at different levels. And so I always try to have something that feels like a low barrier to entry, but if there's students that I have in the class that are really experienced or just like zoom ahead, I always try to have sort of like an optional extension or a stretch problem. So you kind of choose your own adventure.
Well, that's like a really nice idea though, isn't it? Because it is difficult to differentiate sometimes, especially when you're on especially in the basics. When you're on the basics and you've got a couple of students in your class that have like been developing software for 4 years, you feel a bit silly sometimes going, we're just doing loops again. And it's nice to have something to give them. But yeah, so that's the more advanced one. And the simpler one is, oh, cool, I see. So
there's actually
there's less mathematics. There's less thinking about it. Yeah, is that what you're doing there for the
a little bit? Yeah, there's just one of the rectangles in the yellow rectangle usually throws kids off on that one. I'm like, draw a picture, or on the other one.
But it's good though, isn't it? Because like I'm the sort of person that always carries a notebook around with me, and when I'm thinking of software ideas, I'm just there sketching flow diagrams and stuff. And I always said, whenever we talked about software development to my kids, I was always like, look, I do it. I'm just sat here making notes and drawing diagrams and things and trying to solve problems before I go and do code. So try that. And they just look at me and go, yes, sir, but you're old, aren't you? So it's only when you actually get to a problem that they can't solve directly in their head that they see the benefit of these tools that we've got, like flow diagrams, like prototyping, and like, you know, drawing this out and working out the relationship between them. But it's such a nice way. And I know I keep saying this, but it's just nice to have that visual stimulus, and you know, they know what they're trying to build, and like you said, they get up at the whiteboard and they write it out. They're using those tools effectively then.
Totally.
Fantastic. So I'm feeling quite good about that, Jenna. Should we have a move on to the next section? If I can find my
For
presentation,
sure.
wherever that's gone. Because the last thing that we wanted to have a look at really was, sorry, I've got your project back up then. And then we've got me doing the demo. Sorry, I've over prepared again. We're still going through well, I always over prepare. This is why these sessions tend to go long. So apologies if anybody's desperately got somewhere to go in the next 15 minutes. But we'll
You can't be underprepared if you're over
well,
prepared.
that's what everyone always says. And then I'm an hour and a half into an hour live stream, and I'm like, maybe you can be over prepared. Maybe that is a thing. But I just want what you think about this, because I wrote this sentence earlier and I was quite pleased with myself. How does the positioning of coding as part of an arts program change the way you program? Just see.
I do really like that.
I don't know if this is the same internationally, but in the UK, there would be 2 different spellings of program as well. So it would be even nicer if I'd written it in UK English then, because we do double ME for programs that are not computer programs. But these are the key things I think that we talked about, and I just want you to give me a bit more. We said we'd lower the barrier to entry because they're not wrestling with math setups or too many concepts, and it's a nice visual way to get people excited. Anything more you want to say on that?
I feel good about what we've, no.
Totally as long as I've summarized correctly, because I don't want to put words into your mouth.
Yeah, no, that's good. I like it. Good job, David.
That's good. I'm pleased. And then we said it casts a wider net as well. And I think this is the thing that's like intrigues me about it more than anything else. It's just that people that wouldn't be drawn to coding from its like standard way of delivering it might be. And it's the people that I'd be particularly keen to. And I've caught these people in the past just because like they liked me as a teacher. So they picked my subject because they wanted to be in my class more. And then they've actually really enjoyed it and gone to do amazing things. But they weren't, not necessarily a math, a science, or sort of like a logic person, but they were able to apply skills in a different way. And I think that the way you've structured your program, certainly, it seems to me that a lot more people get a taster for programming and what it really is, and how creative it can be earlier.
I totally agree. I'm going back to point number 1, lower barrier to entry. And the only
when you said I did really well at.
I am maintaining my answer and modifying it slightly, which is that I hate 2 things. One, I hate positioning, or I hate the idea that because we're approaching it from an arts perspective, that it is somehow less rigorous, or that I don't want to present this as an avenue to like skirt math, or for people that aren't good at math. Like, I just think
we saw with the Mondrian example that math is key to solving that problem, isn't it?
Totally.
So I don't think that's the case at all.
And especially when you're, I think this is such a great way to enrich the maths and sciences and to explore the same problems, but just from a different avenue. That's, I guess, the nuance that I would throw in there is that it's not like, on the one hand, I think we're making it easier, but I don't think it's because it's creative that the barrier to entry is low. I don't know. I don't want to present this as like students who aren't good at math and science should take an arts perspective, and that tends to be women or people. No, we're on the same page about that.
I think we are. I think the important thing is that it's not presented as, and this is a common problem with computer science in the UK and from what I've seen worldwide. It's not presented as you must be good at maths or you cannot engage in this course. It's presented a little bit as you will be exploring math in a very complex way, but you'll be doing it whilst you're investigating something that matters. And I think that's the big difference.
Yeah, I think it's the sugar that helps the medicine go down, kind of, for some students. I don't know.
I do often find that I've fallen out with teachers in the past because they said things like this to me. It's like, well, the only people allowed to do this course are people who are good at math. And I find that really, well, from my own personal experience of students that I've taught, I don't think it really matters that much. If they're motivated to explore and find things out, that's a better skill to have than just being good at math, because they can be good enough at the math they need to do to solve the problem
Mhm.
at hand. Sorry, I feel like I've got on my own personal hobby horse about this now, so I apologize if I've taken it
We're
off the
probably both
rails
on our
slightly.
little on our own little horses. Stack Overflow exists for a reason. No, I'm just
Absolutely,
kidding. Yeah.
absolutely. And for those of you that can't be bothered to go to Stack Overflow, we, at Replit, we've got Ghostwriter now, so you can just
Ooh,
turn it on
shameless
and type
plug.
away, and it
Nice.
suggests. Good shameless plug, isn't it? It's like I work for the company or something. In all seriousness, though, if you haven't tried it yet, do try it. I did like 3 days worth of work in an afternoon, because all that like repetitive code that you get sick of writing, it was just suggesting for me, and it's nice, and it actually solved a few problems for me that I hadn't thought about yet. It suggested something, and I went, "Oh, I hadn't thought about that." I would have written the program, and it would have crashed, and I would have gone. It would have taken me a while to get back to that point. So well worth a go. It's honestly really, really good. I'll stop plugging things now and get on to the next one. Um, I think you talked about this beforehand, and you said it fits computer science in productively. I think I'll summarize what I thought your point was, but you might want to correct me. But it was where you might have difficulty in fitting in a standalone computer science lesson for its own sake. You
Mm,
can combine it in this way, and actually, the end result is greater than the sum of its parts, because you've got
mm,
two really interesting areas colliding, and they produce better
mhm.
results.
Totally. I think this is we solve geometry problems all the time. We've done physics problems. And I think the schools that I've been a part of have struggled to figure out how to fit computer science into a packed curriculum. And so for the schools that have the benefits of like having an arts program, this has fit in really nicely into our ninth grade arts rotation. So then, which already existed, and now I'm seeing every student in the ninth grade. And we explore color, and we explore line, and we explore all these concepts that you want to touch on in an arts class. And also we do math problems, and also we do physics problems. So I feel like purely from a curricular perspective, this has been a way for us to reach all of our students, um, and impart these
I like that
important
idea that,
skills.
it's like, if it, especially with so many of the US schools in particular making steps to everyone having a computer science curriculum of some kind. That's a big deal at the moment, and certainly across the world that's happening more and more. Schools do need to be thinking about where they can fit it in. Where, and the first choice in most cases is to talk to the science and the math teachers. And maybe
Mhm.
that's not where you want to be going. Maybe you need to be talking
Yeah,
to the arts faculty and seeing where it can fit in. In Wales,
yeah.
where I live and where I've been teaching, we've got this idea called areas of learning and experience, where they've combined a bunch of subjects together to try and get them to work off each other. And one of those is like the design technology faculty, or the woodwork and textiles and cookery and all that sort of stuff. So already my mind is firing off with, well, if we can do that with art, what can we do in Wales with all these subjects as well in our back pocket? But there we go. That's just me.
Totally.
And the last one, oh, sorry, I managed to skip to the next slide now. Have I? Where have I gone? Right, there we are. Too many animations, too many buttons to press. Sorry. The last one, this felt very relevant to me, was it encourages independence, because students seem like they're going to be more likely to engage and develop their own skills if they're interested in the product and the end result they want to build. If it's and this is why in 100 Days of Code we've done project-based learning, and every day as a project to give somebody something to sink their teeth into, and
Mm,
a reason to go and investigate why that might be useful. And this to me is the perfect encapsulation of that. Every
mm,
one of your lessons seems to have an end result which is interesting and which would push people to find out more. I could see myself, researching P5JS after that first day, so I could come in and impress you the next lesson with something cool I've whipped up. And I'm sure you get a lot of that.
I totally do, for sure. And this is a little bit of a tangent, and I don't know if Mitch Resnick and the MIT's lifelong kindergarten program has ever been on your radar. Mitch Resnick is like their group created Scratch. But there's so much emphasis, at least my memory, of their whole ethos is about how you pair students, how you allow them to find their own passion and to pair them with projects that are personally relevant. And so the extent possible that you can create something that's open-ended enough for students to like bring their own passion, that's sort of that's going to have the greatest result, both as it relates to students' excitement about the subject and their willingness to pursue and tackle hard problems. So I totally agree. I'm glad you threw in that last one. That I think that's a key point.
I think thank you so much for talking to us today, because genuinely I feel all excited about what can I build now that teaches this in a different way. How can I go at it in a different approach? And I remember when we built our P5JS tutorial, having difficulty with like inspiration initially, because I'm so used to the standard way of teaching computer science. And now I feel like I could do a much better job of pushing something that produces something creative. And of course, I've got some ideas to steal now from you. So
well, please steal away. And obviously there's so many, and nothing obviously that I've created has come from a vacuum. And there's people on the internet, like I think Daniel Schiffman is just like an internet god, probably my favorite like code person on the planet. But that particularly if P5JS is the route to explore, I start with Daniel Schiffman videos, or I go to openprocessing.org, which is frequently where I'll get like visual ideas that then I try to pare down into things that are little nuggets that students can solve. So that's my 2 cents about if you want to create lessons of this ilk.
Thank you, Jenna. And thank you so much for talking to us tonight. I think we've got a bit of time for Q&A. If anybody's got any questions in the chat. Whilst we're waiting for some questions to come in, I'll just pop up some comments here. I think it's quite nice. I think Marg said, I think it's a different entry point. We're on the low one. This is when we're talking about the maths. I think she's right. That's what we came to, which I believe, if it's the same, Marg, was just got a commendation in our recent tutorial jam for being a fantastic presenter. But
nice.
Yeah, I think that's important.
I like that point a lot. I think that's a good point.
And there's another one then, which is Kim's brought up, which it could be a way to make maths more relevant, to show students what they could do with it in a practical way. And I remember my maths teacher. He was, he impressed upon me a style of teaching that I sort of incorporated into my own, which was he was kooky. He was just like, he was bizarre and strange, and he would do weird things. Like one day he brought in a photograph of a snail's trail, and he was like, measure that, it's a proper sine wave, honestly. And we were all, it's a ridiculous thing to do, but because he was just like such a kooky character, we were properly into this idea of, is this snail's trail a sine wave? It turned out he made it up, but it was just a fun kooky thing to do. But yeah, I think like mathematics itself sometimes suffers from not having a direct application. I think this sort of,
I totally agree.
Yeah, this sort
I use
of thing
trig all the time. Who knew? Yeah. And I solve fun problems using trig. And yeah, I totally agree. I think more of this in math. And that's I've come at this from the arts, but I think obviously there's so many fun applications, even just using this visual, even using P5JS within a math class to visualize trigonometry. Totally. I agree with Kim.
Again, Marg's popped up. This is the CMU graphics is what she got commended in the tutorial jam for, yeah, I was excited to see that, because it's nice to see that hopefully some of your ideas now, Jenna, will filter out into the wider world. So, I think we haven't had any yet. Sorry, go on.
I just want to plug and say, if anybody wants to ever like collaborate on these things or whatever, feel free to email me, or I'm always down to like.
So I've got a slide with your contact details on that, so I'll bring up. There we go.
Oh yeah. You can go to my website and you will find me either on Instagram. I probably should be on Twitter. I feel like that's what education people do, but I've just, you know what, Elon Musk, I don't know. I just don't know. That's a whole nother story. We won't go there.
Yeah, best not bring up the E word at the moment. We're all looking at our Twitter accounts and going, I don't know what's happening. Thanks so much. I'm going to pop back to this slide now, because before we say goodbye, and I'll just wait. If you do have any more questions, please pop them in the chat. But I just want to call out that this is a big week of events at the moment, and we've got education office hours tomorrow. So if you've got any questions burning in the back of your brain about Teams for EDU or Replit in general, and you are a teacher or an educator and you want to pop along to those, you can come to the EDU office hours tomorrow at about this time, and I'll be there to answer your questions. On Thursday, I'm doing a Teams for EDU Basics workshop where we're going to be working through a bunch of stuff, and especially looking at how all the new features fit into Teams for EDU. But there's a bunch more stuff going on, and please do keep your eye on the community hub for events. It's replit.com/community-hub. We like our hyphens in our URLs at Replit, and you'll see a list of all the events that are going on for educators, for our creator users, and for everyone. So there's lots of opportunities to catch up with us. We've had some nice comments about me in the chat, but I won't bring those up because I think we're here to talk about Jenna.
You're great, David.
Oh, thank you. But I've really enjoyed speaking to you today, Jenna. And honestly, from the first time we talked, when we were talking to you about being a rep for EDU, you really inspired me with the way you tackle programming, and the fact that, honestly, amazed at gender balance, like the gender balance in your classroom first of all, and then the more you talk, the more I go, oh yeah, and it's more just like I thank you for pointing at things that clearly should have been more obvious to me, but makes so much sense when you show me what you've done and how you've innovated with it. So thank you so much.
For sure. Happy to be here. It's been fun.
Thank you very much, everyone. Sorry, Jenna, go on.
No, I was going to say thanks for being part of, honestly, an indispensable tool that I don't know how I would be teaching. I wouldn't be teaching what I'm teaching without Replit. So.
Well, that's the way I feel. That's why I work for them now, because if Replit went away, I don't know if I could go back to the old way.
Yeah. Get push, get add.
It's not just that. It's sort of like you're walking around a room of Windows PCs hoping that the install hasn't broken because it's really fragile, that you've got this C++ compiler and all that stuff. And this one's 2 versions behind that one. And yeah, that was my life before Replit. So very happy to have everything in one place and online and consistent. Right, guys. Well, thank you very much for attending today. Thanks very much for your contributions in the chat. We will be having another one of our pedagogy sessions in December, which will be a bit more about getting stuff for your classroom with another of our reps for EDU. But we'll pop that information in the newsletter as usual, and we'll put it on the curriculum hub for you to find out about. For now, though, I've been David Morgan, and Jenna's been Jenna deBoisblanc. You see, pronunciation on point. Please let us know if you want anything in particular covered over the next few months, and we will do our best to do it. Jenna, once more, thank you very much. And everyone else, thank you.
Thank you.